if you are pre-diabetic. So what is prediabetes? This is something your doctor might have told you and you may not be sure what it is. So prediabetes can be explained a lot of different ways, but here's kind of the basics. Prediabetes is a diagnosis given to people who are at risk for developing diabetes. So if a person is pre-diabetic, their blood sugars are higher than normal, but they're not yet to a level that your doctor can say, yep, you're for sure diabetic. Your body has not yet kicked into diabetes range, but your blood sugars are too high. Anyone who has had gestational diabetes is considered pre-diabetic, as gestational diabetes raises a person's likelihood of getting diagnosed with diabetes. And gestational diabetes is a temporary form of diabetes that a person gets during their pregnancy. If someone is overweight, this can also cause prediabetes. And having a family history of diabetes can also put a person into a pre-diabetic risk category. So if you have one or even both parents who are diabetic, your doctor might diagnose you as pre-diabetic. What does it mean for you if your doctor says that you're pre-diabetic? So basically what they're saying is your blood sugars are higher than they should be, and we need to bring them down. If you do not change any of your habits, you will likely develop diabetes in the next few months or years. This unfortunately is true. If someone has pre-diabetes, unless they do change things, they will develop diabetes. Blood sugar doesn't just stay moderately high. Unfortunately, it continues to raise if we don't change our habits. The good news is, though, as a person who's pre-diabetic, you can lower your blood sugars and prevent a diabetes diagnosis. This is great. Pre-diabetes is reversible. Diabetes is not. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So it is best to make lifestyle changes right away to lower your blood sugars, because once a person has diabetes, it is permanent. It does not go away. Diabetes can, of course, be controlled. People live with diabetes all the time, can live very happy, long, healthy lives, but it can't be cured. They will always have it. So just to kind of sum that up, if you are pre-diabetic, you still have time to make changes to prevent diabetes. You are in a good position. You have the power. Once a person is diagnosed as diabetic, this is permanent. It can be managed. It's a condition that a lot of people live with, but it cannot be reversed or cured. Pre-diabetes is reversible. You can make it go away. Diabetes is not reversible. It's once you have it for good. It's not going anywhere. So now that your doctor has told you you're pre-diabetic, what should you do? First thing to remember is that all hope is not lost. You are in a much better position than someone who goes to the doctor and is told that they're diabetic. This can be really, really scary for people. As a pre-diabetic, you still have time to act. You can make some changes to your habits and your blood sugars will go back down to a normal level. Pre-diabetes is reversible. That's important to remember. You will need to change some of your eating habits and add some more physical activity to your day to lower your blood sugars, though. It does take change. Remember, if things stay the same as they are now, you will develop diabetes. So lowering those blood sugars with these lifestyle changes that we're going to talk about can prevent the onset of diabetes. Onset meaning like getting diabetes or becoming diagnosed with diabetes. So a few important things to remember. I know some people think like, oh, I'm pre-diabetic, I'm going to get diabetes no matter what. Why should I even, try to prevent it? There's a couple reasons why. If a person is pre-diabetic, they don't have to prick their finger and get blood every day to check their blood sugars. This is something that diabetic people have to deal with every day. It's a necessity for their health. So as a pre-diabetic, there's no need for that. Your doctor will check your blood maybe every 3 to 6 months when you go to the clinic, but you won't have to do this at home. Diabetic people do have to check their blood sugars every day, sometimes multiple times a day. So this usually involves pricking their finger, squeezing out a little bit of blood, and putting it on those machines called glucose machines, glucometers. There's a couple different names for them. As a pre-diabetic, you don't have to do that. As a diabetic, that is something you have to do. So pre-diabetics also have no need to inject insulin. If you know anyone who's diabetic, you know that people have to do this once, sometimes multiple times a day. Not everyone who's diabetic has to be on insulin, but quite a few diabetics do. So this is just something that you won't have to worry about if you can prevent diabetes by taking care of your pre-diabetes now. So a couple of vocab words. when you hear people talk about diabetes and pre-diabetes, you hear the word glucose a lot. Glucose is just the biology word for sugar. So anything that you eat, whether it's, any kind of food, but especially sugary foods and carbohydrates, they turn into glucose in your body. And glucose is the form of sugar that the cells use for energy. Your body is made up of all these cells that help us do our jobs. Those cells need energy, and the energy that they use comes from glucose. Glucose comes from our food being broken down in our body. So what helps that glucose get into the cells? That is insulin. So when a person is diabetic, their insulin doesn't work correctly. Insulin is made by an organ in your body called the pancreas, and it's a hormone, and like this picture shows, it acts like a key. Insulin basically opens up the door to the cell so that the glucose, those sugar molecules, can get inside and give the cell energy. If glucose doesn't work right, the cell door stays closed and glucose can't get inside, which means it just stays in your bloodstream. This is what gives you high blood sugar. This is just showing us where the pancreas is in the body. So remember, if the glucose can't enter the cell, if our insulin doesn't work correctly, the glucose can't get in, it's stuck in the bloodstream. This is what leads to high blood sugar. So when you go to the doctor and they're measuring your blood sugar, this is what they're looking at. They're looking at how many little sugar or glucose molecules are sitting in your bloodstream. If there's too many, then you know you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. The sugar cannot get into your cells where it's needed to give you energy. So what should you actually do to lower your blood sugars and prevent from getting diabetes now that you're pre-diabetic? Two things. One, a healthier diet is needed with less sugar and fewer carbohydrates. This doesn't mean no sugar and no carbohydrates. That would be really difficult and honestly not even recommended. But most of us in this country, especially in the United States, eat way too many carbohydrates and way too much sugar. So we'll talk a little bit about how to cut some of those things out. And we need to get more physical activity into our routine every day. This doesn't have to mean joining a gym or running marathons or anything like that. We'll give some ideas about how to burn more calories and get more physical activity into our daily lives. So one thing your doctor may say to you is that if you're pre-diabetic, you need to lose weight. And technically, whenever a person does lose weight, their blood sugar will go down. What I want to make sure that we focus on, though, is if we change our habits. So if we eat healthier, eat fewer carbs and fewer sugars, and add more physical activity in our day, even if the numbers on the scale don't go down, our blood sugars will go down. So you can't only look at the scale to see how your health is doing. There's a couple of things that happen inside our body that we can't see when we change our habits to become healthier. One thing that's really great that happens is our metabolism increases, and metabolism is just the way that our body burns calories. So when we increase our physical activity and we eat better, our body will burn more calories even when it's resting. So this is really, really important. And this leads to the second thing. Some of our body fat, when we eat healthier and exercise, will turn into muscle. This is why sometimes, maybe we look and feel healthier, we feel thinner, our clothes fit a little differently, they may be too loose, but maybe the numbers on the scale haven't changed. This is probably because some of our body fat has changed to muscle. Muscle is heavier than fat, but it takes up a lot less room. So it's really important to focus on changing these lifestyle habits to get healthier. Don't necessarily expect to see a huge drop on the scale. That happens for some people. It might not happen for everybody, but I promise eating healthier and exercising more is going to make the changes you want to see, the lowering of that blood sugar to reverse prediabetes. So the formula to increase physical activity. First thing is you want to walk at least 10,000 steps a day. This sounds like a lot, but it's about 4.5 miles every day. Most people in their day in the United States walk about 5,000 steps. So just doubling that can get you to this goal. And it doesn't have to be all at once. This is through your entire day. Walking around needs to add up to 4.5 miles or 10,000 steps. If you have one of those step counting watches or bracelets, that's fine. They make really inexpensive ones that are really nice that you hook on your belt. If you don't want to do one of those, sometimes those hook ones that you hook on your belt or on your waist are only like $20. There are also really simple free step counter apps in your phone if you have a smartphone that you can download. So there's lots of options for this. You don't have to buy a really fancy smartwatch. Another thing you need to do is every day you need to be doing some activity for 30 minutes that raises your heart rate. And this part is really, really important. Raising our heart rate is going to make our metabolism go up, and this is what's going to burn more calories. So if we don't do any physical activity or exercise that gets our heart rate up, we're not going to burn those extra calories. We're not going to turn fat to muscle. So how do we know if our heart rate is up? Obviously, you can take your pulse to see if your heart rate is faster, but a really easy way to tell is if you're a little bit out of breath. So you know your heart rate is increased enough for this to count as your physical activity if you are not able to talk for a full sentence without taking a breath. It should be difficult to carry on a full conversation when you're exercising hard enough. So normally, like if I'm just walking around the grocery store, I'm not walking fast enough that I'm out of breath. But if I'm going for a walk in the park that's going to count for exercise, I'm going to be walking quickly. It is possible to get out of breath doing that. So one good way to keep our heart rate up without, running for 30 minutes straight, if we're not in shape enough to do that already, is by doing something called interval training. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. All it is doing something at a very intense, high level of difficulty for 1 minute, and then slowing down and doing the same thing at a slower pace for about 2 minutes. And then you go back to 1 minute, slower for 2 minutes, etc. I'll show you what this looks like on the next page. But basically what this allows us to do is keep our heart rate high without working super, super hard for the full 30 minutes. So this is just an example of interval training. If you Google walking interval training ideas, you can see a lot of these on the internet. But basically this person, this little computerized man here, he's doing an 8-minute warm-up. He's walking fast, so you don't want to be walking really slowly. You want to be, walking quickly like you're in a hurry to get somewhere. Then he is either jogging, or walking very, very, very fast for 1 minute. When he's doing this, his heart rate goes up. He should be breathing quickly. He should be having a little bit of feeling of being out of breath. Then once he's done that for 1 minute, he can walk a little bit slower for 2 minutes, walk fast again for 1 minute, a little slower for 2 minutes, fast again for 1 minute, and do the end with a fast walk, slower than the very fast walk, but a fast walk for 5 minutes. So if he does this, his heart rate will stay up for the entire time, and he will be a little bit out of breath the entire time, which is good. You being a little bit out of breath, having difficulty speaking in full sentences without taking a breath is what shows you that your heart rate is up. So if you need any examples of interval training for beginners or anything like that, there's lots of good examples on YouTube that you can follow along with from home. So if you are a person that has a very physical job or you're already in pretty good shape, this doesn't mean that you would never be pre-diabetic. Unfortunately, some things about pre-diabetes and diabetes are genetic, so some people who seem relatively in shape can still get it. What needs to happen with people who are in this situation is they have to work a little bit harder to get their heart rate up. So let's say my job is I work for a moving company and I'm lifting boxes all day, going up and down stairs. I'm working pretty hard. My heart and my body has gotten really used to this because I do it every day, and it doesn't burn as many calories. It doesn't raise my heart rate enough doing this. I have to do something new and different to challenge my body to get my heart rate up. So people who are doing this might need to do running. They might need to do walking quickly for a longer period of time. They might need to do, YouTube workout videos from home. All of us, as we get more in shape, have to increase our level of activity to get our heart rate up. So that's one thing. Once you've been doing, your same workout for about a month, your body gets used to it, and you have to pick up the pace or do something a little more difficult to get the heart rate up if you want to continue to see the same benefits. So it's something our body is really good at. Our body wants to be efficient, and as soon as it gets used to something, it will burn the least amount of calories possible. So in order to keep challenging it, we have to change our type of exercise. We have to do something different, something more, in order to get our heart rate up. Basically, you want to be looking for any exercise you do to leave you a little bit out of breath. It should be you have to take more breaths than you normally would if your heart rate is up. That's the easiest way to tell, besides taking your pulse. Another really, really, really helpful thing to do that will help you burn more calories even when you're sleeping is if you do muscle strengthening activities. This can be anytime throughout your day mixed in or for 15 minutes straight, and this needs to be at least 3 times a week. This really, really, really helps you not only feel better, have more energy, get stronger, but muscle burns more calories than fat, even when you're sleeping. So in this pictures, you can see people are doing things like jogging in place, sit-ups, wall sits, jumping jacks, squats, push-ups. These exercises are hard. A lot of people choose to do them while the commercials are on or while they're watching TV. If just doing these for 15 minutes a day, 3 times a week can help a lot. If you want YouTube videos for this too, there's some really good ones. I will paste some links to my favorite ones below this video. So super, super important when you're going to be doing, all of this increased physical activity, you want to find physical activities that you enjoy so that it isn't super hard work to be doing them every day. So I definitely encourage you to find things that work for you. This picture right here, look at these nice people dancing by the beach. You don't have to be by a beach to dance. You can dance in your house by yourself, with your family. If you have kids or grandkids, they love little dance parties. Riding bike if you have one. If you don't have one, there are options to rent bikes here in Chicago. The people in the center picture are doing yoga, stretching. This is probably a senior size class. Senior size stands for senior exercise. They have, if you look on YouTube and put exercise for older adults or exercise for seniors, they have really, really good examples of that. Some of them are even in chairs. So if you are someone who has difficulty moving or you have really sore joints, there are really, really good chair exercises on YouTube. I will put a link to some of them below this as well. If you enjoy playing sports, that's a really, really good way to get your physical activity in, playing soccer, playing tennis, things like that. And if you just, want to walk, walking is really, really good exercise. And it's really great if you can get more than 10,000 steps in a day. Doing something like hiking can be really great for that, or even just walking around the city. You don't have to go out to the woods if that's something that you don't enjoy or that's difficult. As long as you're walking fast enough to raise your heart rate, it's really good exercise. So we talked about the exercise. The second part that's sometimes more difficult for people is changing our diets. Now, Americans are not known for having the most excellent diets. And a lot of people, when they move to this country from other countries, their diets get worse because American food, we're full of processed food. We have lots of fast food. We're just not a healthy country when it comes to food. So as pre-diabetics, we kind of have to fight against that and make our own way. So there's lots of things that we eat that make our blood sugar go up. And our blood sugar needs to go up some. That's what gives our cells energy. But there are healthy and unhealthy ways that our blood sugar goes up and down. So we're going to talk about that. Sweet things and carbohydrates are the two things that make our blood sugar go up the most, go up too much. And those are the things that we in the United States eat too much of. And not just in the US, people in lots of countries eat too much of these. As pre-diabetics, though, we will need to eat less sugar and less carbohydrates to prevent getting diabetes. Again, if we leave our diet the same as it is, we are going to get diabetes. We have to change something if we want to prevent this. So this is the whole foundation of what we want our diet to look like. You don't have to count calories as much if you follow this model. Counting calories can be kind of a pain. I don't want you guys to have to do that, so it's easiest just to follow this model. So this is a plate. This is called the diabetic my plate, but honestly, this plate is for anyone who's diabetic, pre-diabetic, or anyone who just wants to lose weight. So half of the plate you see is non-starchy vegetables. These are vegetables that don't have a lot of carbohydrates. So we'll talk about what that means. 1/4 of the plate, or 1/4 of the plate, is our proteins. These are things like nuts, fish, meat, seeds, some dairy products, eggs. And then the last category, this last quarter of our plate, or 1/4 of our plate, has our starches, also called carbohydrates. So lots of things fit into this category, things like pasta, bread, tortillas, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, rice, beans, corn, anything that's sweet. Any fruits also fit into this category. So we will talk about managing this category because this is what's most difficult for people. If you think about a dinner, like a spaghetti dinner here in the United States, you will have a whole plate full of pasta and maybe like a little bit of meat and some vegetables on top. This is not a healthy way to eat if we want to lose weight, if we're pre-diabetic or we're diabetic. So we have to change our thinking with that. We're going to just show some examples of what a healthy plate looks like in this format. So in this example, this is maybe a person who is eating a vegetarian meal. Maybe they're a vegetarian, maybe they're just trying to eat less meat, which is healthy for us. 1/4 of the plate, so 1/4 is protein. This is hummus, so maybe you guys have eaten that before. It's just like a cream of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, mashed chickpeas. It's pretty good. Normally it's made with garlic and sesame oil. Another 1/4 of the plate, this is their carbs or their carbohydrates. Another word for it is starches. Looks like they just have some pita broken up into small pieces. This looks like whole grain pita or whole wheat pita. And then the half of their plate that is the non-starchy vegetables or the non-carbohydrate vegetables, looks like they have some red bell pepper, mushrooms, purple onion, and yellow bell pepper. This looks pretty yummy to me, honestly, as a dinner. So this is somebody's breakfast. This looks very fancy. Your breakfast probably doesn't look like this every day. I know mine doesn't. So half of the plate is, again, your non-starchy vegetables. So non-starchy meaning very low in carbohydrates. This person has some mashed avocado, tomato, cilantro, some green onion. Their 1/4 of their plate that is protein, they have an egg. And the 1/4 of their plate that is their starch or their carbohydrate looks like one bigger whole wheat tortilla. This is a really good example because this person, it looks like, is going to make this into a taco, but they put it on their plate like this first so they could get it into the Diabetes My Plate format so they can see how much they should be putting in each section. So the half of their plate that's non-starchy veggies, again, these are the low carbohydrate ones, got some jalapenos, tomatoes, lettuce, looks like some onions in there, some carrots. The 1/4 of their plates, that's their carbs or starches. This is 2 small corn tortillas. And then the 1/4 of their plate that's their protein is some ground beef. So again, most of us don't eat visually in this format all the time, but we can lay out our food in this way so we can see when we put it together in something like a taco or maybe making a soup or a rice dish or something, we can see how much we should have in each category. This is just another example. This person has a 1/4 of the plate looks like salmon or some sort of fish as their protein. Their carbohydrates here are some brown rice. And then half of their plate is the non-starchy veggies. They could honestly have a lot more on this half. It isn't very filled. This is broccolini, which if you've never had it, it tastes just like broccoli, but it's usually more expensive. So if you're feeling rich that day, feel free to try some, but otherwise it tastes just like broccoli. This is a really good example, and one thing I want us to notice on this plate is that you can see how big the Diabetes My Plate should be. It should be 9 inches. So a lot of dinner plates are 12 inches. If we were to fill up that entire 12-inch dinner plate, that would be too much food. The inner part of dinner plates, so usually there's like a part that kind of is deeper than the other part, that's usually 9 inches, or like a salad plate is normally 9 inches from edge to edge. So here you can see the 1/4 of their plate that's starch. This starch is also called carbohydrates. Here they have some rice with black beans in it. Their protein is some chicken, and then their half of the plate that's vegetables. Specifically, this is non-starchy, non-carbohydrate vegetables. They have broccoli, bell peppers, carrots, looks like some yellow squash here. I see some onion, maybe some cucumbers under here, avocado. They have a lot going on. In this category, the non-starchy vegetables category, it's really hard to eat too much of this stuff. If you're ever hungry, eating more of this is not going to raise your blood sugar very much. Just another example, this person has some, looks like spaghetti noodles as their starch or their carbohydrates. They have chicken as their protein. This looks like grilled chicken. And then they have a salad with spinach, tomatoes, and bell peppers as their half of the plate that's their non-starchy vegetables. Again, you can see they have water on the side. It's not something sugary like soda or juice, and their plate is 9 inches. And this 9-inch plate they have filled all the way to the edge. So that's something good to remember. If you're using a 9-inch plate, you can fill it all the way to the edge. If you're using a 12-inch plate, those bigger dinner plates, you just can't fill it all the way to the edge. If you are a community health patient and you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, we can give you one of these plates. This is an actual diabetic MyPlate that you can use to visualize or measure your food in to make sure you're eating in the right way. So on this diabetic MyPlate, which is also for, it says eating right to manage and prevent diabetes, preventing diabetes, that means it's for people with pre-diabetes. So half of it, you can see again, non-starchy vegetables, a quarter protein, and a quarter is grains and or fruit. Another thing that's missing that also counts in this carbohydrates category, which they label as grains and fruit, are things like starchy vegetables. This would be like potatoes or corn, and things like legumes, which is like lentils and beans. So there's a lot of information here. I'm going to go over it, but what things count as carbohydrates? This can be kind of confusing. This is that 1/4 of your plate that's carbs or starches, and this is the part that really raises our blood sugar. This is what most Americans eat way too much of, and we only want this to take up 1/4 of our plate. Eating a lot more than that is gonna raise our blood sugar too much, and we're not gonna be able to reverse our prediabetes. So, things that fit into this category are all types of grains. This is anything made from wheat or wheat flour, all kinds of rice, brown rice, yellow rice, black rice, red rice, wild rice, any kind of rice. Pasta, that's white and wheat pasta, quinoa, bulgur, barley, oats and oatmeal, any kind of cereal, grits, bread, rolls, bagels, buns, any kind of bread-like product, Pop-Tarts, anything that's made of dough. So this would be like dumplings, for example. Tortillas and crackers are also in this category. Also, a carbohydrate are things that are legumes or legumes and beans. So this is lentils. It's lentejas in Spanish, if that lentils doesn't sound familiar. Beans, all kinds of beans. Peas fit into this category, and also green beans. So these things right here in this category, these are nutritious sources of protein as well. They still can be eaten, they just need to be eaten in limited amounts and put into the carb section. So even though they have protein, they need to go in our carb section because we have to eat a smaller amount because they will raise our blood sugar. Also in the carb section are starchy vegetables. These are vegetables that have higher amounts of carbohydrates in them. Corn fits into this category. That includes popcorn too, but like also corn on the cob, canned corn, steamed corn, cream corn, any type of corn. Anything that's made from corn or corn flour. So this is things like tortillas or anything made with corn starch or corn flour. So like cornbread, for example. And then every kind of potato fits into this category too. Sweet potatoes have slightly fewer carbohydrates than regular potatoes, but it's really not very much difference. They're both starchy vegetables. Any sort of fruit juices, or fruit smoothies count as carbs as well. Fruit is very healthy, but it is high in sugar, so that's why it's in the high carbohydrate category. Any dairy product that is not made from skim or 1% milk is considered a carbohydrate. And this is because there's a natural sugar that occurs in milk. This sugar is called lactose. This sugar naturally occurs in dairy, so you can't get it out. So anything that's usually cheese or yogurt is usually made from whole milk or 2% milk. So that's why anything that's a dairy product needs to go in your carbs category. And then right here at the bottom, this is really important, anything that's a sweet, so like candy, cookies, soda, pastries, desserts, ice cream, this counts as carbs, as well as any kind of alcohol, any fried foods, or fast food. So fried foods and fast food are always really high in carbs. The only thing that isn't high in carbs is if you were to get a salad with no croutons on it and a very light dressing, like a balsamic vinaigrette or Italian dressing or something. It's very hard to eat healthy if you're eating fast food. And things like croutons are in this category. They're made of bread, basically. It's like toasted bread. So I know we just talked about carbs for a little while. Carbs are important. We need them to live and to feel energetic. The problem is most of us just eat too many carbs, and this is why so many of us are pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetes and diabetes are on the rise in the United States and a lot of countries, and it's because we just eat too many carbs and too many sweets. So the healthy kind of carbs we want to eat on the 1/4 of our plate are things like whole grains, like brown rice, wild rice, oatmeal, quinoa, whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, things like bulgur, barley, things like whole corn, like corn on the cob, for example, or potatoes with the skin in them. We can eat starchy vegetables cooked in a healthy way, like roasted potatoes, for example, or grilled corn, instead of things like French fries or deep fried corn cakes or something like that. And then we want to eat whole fruit. This is instead of fruit juices, fruit syrups, or fruit flavors. Fruit can be a very healthy source of carbs and fiber, but fruit juices take all of that out. All the fiber's gone, a lot of the nutrients are gone, and all we're left with is the sugar. So what all of these healthier carbs have in common is that they have a lot of fiber. This makes our blood sugar go up, but then it will go down in a much more steady, slower rate, so it keeps us full longer. That's why if we have a donut for breakfast versus if we have oatmeal for breakfast, we're going to say way longer having eaten oatmeal for breakfast than a donut. A donut has carbs and sugar, but our blood sugar will crash after just about an hour because it doesn't have any nutrients or fiber to keep us full. This is super, super important. If you have ever heard of the keto diet, it's been pretty trendy and commonly used in the past year or two. Please, please, please don't go on this diet unless you talk to your doctor first. The keto diet, also called ketogenic diet or a no carb diet, they're very hard to stick to. Sometimes they're not safe, and they can cause a lot of things like headaches, low energy, and a lot of really severe side effects. A lot of times what happens too is people go on this diet for just a couple months because one, it's very hard to stick to, and also it's not healthy to go on it for a long time, and they gain the weight right back. Keto diets is when a person eats no carbs. That is a very hard lifestyle to stick to, and it's also not healthy long term. So there's some good news when we're talking about eating in this diabetes my plate fashion. Anything that's on the one half of the plate that is low in carbs are non-starchy vegetables. We can pretty much eat as much of this as we want, and it's not going to raise our blood sugar. So here are just some ideas of the lowest carbohydrate vegetables. These ones all fit on the side of the plate that's the non-starchy vegetables. So when someone has been eating, not that healthy for a long time, when their body switches to this new diabetes my plate format, it's going to take some getting used to. It's really important that when we change our diet, we listen to our body, and we want to eat when we're hungry and not eat if we're not hungry. So sometimes if we are switching to this diabetic my plate diet, especially if we've also added the physical activity that we need to prevent diabetes, we might get hungry between meals. That's okay. If we're hungry between meals, we need to listen to our body. So this is just an example of someone who's following this diabetic my plate diet. You can see they have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but they also have a snack. This one looks like they have a small pear and a handful of almonds. So if someone's not hungry, there's no need to eat a snack. Your body's telling you that it's had enough. If you're hungry, though, it is okay to eat a small snack between meals. And the best way to guide you with snacks is you want a snack between meals to be no more than 200 calories, and it should include some protein. So I'm going to give you some examples of good snacks that are pretty easy to prepare and to take with you on the go. So this is a really great snack for adults and kids. These little small oranges called clementines are really great. They have a good amount of fiber and they're nice and sweet. So a mandarin orange and 1 string cheese is a great snack. A small apple and a handful of any type of nuts or seeds is a great snack. Here they have almonds, and I say small apple because you guys have been to the grocery store. You know, some apples are just giant these days. If you're pre-diabetic, you don't want to eat a big apple at one time. Put the other half in the fridge and save it for the next day's snack. Eating a whole apple that's really big one can really, really raise our blood sugar if we're not careful. Some other ideas are raspberries or any kind of berries with yogurt. This is a great snack, and remember, yogurt has protein in it, especially Greek yogurt is higher in protein. And berries are something that's sweet and delicious, but they also have fiber in it to help balance out that sugar. Another good snack, you get your protein from peanut butter, you get a nice crunch and non-starchy vegetables with the celery. Another one using celery and carrots here is hummus. So this is that creamed garbanzo beans or creamed chickpeas made with some garlic and sesame oil. Very, very good healthy snack. And then if you're traveling somewhere, you don't have a refrigerator, having something like pretzels with nuts or pretzels with peanut butter is a really good snack. Now, obviously pretzels, these are a bread-based product. These are a carb. You don't want to have a huge serving. 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup is a serving of pretzels. So just because someone is diabetic or pre-diabetic does not mean they have to give up fruit. Fruit is very good to eat as a snack between meals and also with breakfast, because the person has all day to burn off those calories. This little diagram basically shows you which fruits are highest in sugar. So this can help you decide what fruits you'd like to eat and then how much you want to eat of it. So for example, the fruits up here on the higher sugar end, like bananas and watermelon and mangoes, these you might not want to eat a whole fruit at once. You want to eat a smaller portion because they have more sugar. Mangoes, for example, it's obvious because they're so sweet, they have a lot of sugar. Dried fruit, super, super important when you eat dried fruit to eat a very small amount. A healthy serving size of raisins is about 13 raisins. In those tiny little boxes, that's why there's so few. Raisins have all the sugar, but none of the water. So that's why the sugar is concentrated in such a small amount of raisins. And then things on this other end that have less sugar, like raspberries, strawberries and blackberries, cranberries, guavas, cantaloupes, oranges, you can eat a bigger amount of these and not get super high blood sugar. So you can use this when trying to decide what kind of snack you want to have. So treats that we want to have. It is not realistic to say that you will never eat dessert in your life, that you'll never eat fast food, you'll never drink alcohol. That's just not realistic for most people. So what we want to do is we want to enjoy these foods in small portions and only once in a while, in moderation, basically. So a good example is that I try to do in my life is I only eat things like pizza or fast food, restaurant food, or drink a soda or have dessert about once a week. Same thing if you are a person who enjoys alcoholic beverages, just have, a glass of wine or two or a beer or two just once or twice a month, maybe when there's a celebration with your family or something, because all of these foods that I see have in pictures over here, these are extremely high in carbohydrates and extremely high in sugar. They'll raise your blood sugar a lot, but they have no nutrients or very little nutrients in them. So you're not going to feel full for very long after having had these, and they're not giving your body anything that it needs. It's just basically empty carbohydrates. These, when eaten often, are going to lead to high blood sugar. This is why some people develop pre-diabetes and diabetes in the first place, is because a lot of us in the United States just eat way too much of this. So any food that is high in carbs is just short for carbohydrates, remember, that has little or no fiber will increase our blood sugar very quickly and by a large amount. So that's why when we eat something with carbs, it's best to choose carbs with fiber, like vegetables, whole grains, and whole fruits. So super, super important information. A lot of us don't take time to really care for our own health because we're caring for other people. So whether you're a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, maybe you're taking care of siblings, it can be easy to say, well, I don't really have time to think about my health and changing my habits because I'm taking care of other people. How we show our people that we care for, whether that's kids or anyone else, how we take care of ourselves, that's how they're going to live their life. So one reason that diabetes runs in families is not just because of genetics, it's also because that's how our habits are formed. The first habits that we learn are based on whoever is caring for us when we're young. So if we get better care of ourselves, we're going to automatically take better care of our families, and they're going to see our examples. Letting kids help be involved in food actually gets them to try and eat a lot more food as well. I know this is a really cheesy picture, but I just had to put it in here. Another thing too, this diabetic MyPlate model, this is actually healthy for adults and children. A lot of kids in the United States are overweight, so anyone can eat this way. It's not unhealthy just because someone isn't diabetic or isn't pre-diabetic. If they want to lose weight, they should eat that way. If you have a child or someone in your family who you're caring for that's really, really active, let's say they play like 2 hours of soccer a day, or it's a child who needs to gain weight, the only thing you have to change about the diabetic my plate is just give them more carbs. They should still be eating, the same amount of protein and lots of non-starchy vegetables. They just need to eat more carbs if they're doing really, really physical things, like exercising for more than 2 hours a day. But most of us eat way too many carbs, and that includes kids in the United States. That's why so many kids are overweight. So I'm going to share a lot of resources below about different ways you can get exercise, links to some other videos about different exercises you can do at home, especially including the seated chair exercises. If you have any questions about the clinic or the things we've talked about today, you can comment below. You can email me at awhite@communityhealth.org. And I'm also pasting a link below to our website, but you can go to communityhealth.org to find out more about the clinic. Thank you so much.